When you think of a Targaryen, you probably think of majestic dragons, fierce conquerors, and that iconic silver hair that basically screams, "I am a royal big deal." But in the first looks at A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, we are introduced to a kid who looks less like a dragon prince and more like a shiny billiard ball. He is as bald as a bowling ball. In a world where the Targaryens are famous for those flowing, majestic, silver gold locks that make them look like they just stepped out of a shampoo commercial, we have this little guy who looks more like a shiny thumb. This is Egg, and if you are wondering why he is bald or what is going on with him, you are asking the right questions. This is not just a fashion choice or a case of early onset hair loss. It is actually a very clever, very dangerous survival tactic that changes the course of Westerosi history. To understand why Egg is bald, we have to talk about who he actually is. His real name is Aegon Targaryen. He is the fourth son of Prince Maekar Targaryen. Now, being a fourth son in this family usually means you are about as important as the third-string quarterback on a football team. You are a royal prince, sure, but you are so far down the line of succession that nobody expects you to ever wear a crown. Because of this, Egg leads a life that is a bit more flexible than his older brothers. The story of the baldness starts at a place called the Inn at the Crossing. Egg was supposed to be squiring for his oldest brother, Daeron, but Daeron was not exactly what you would call a model Targaryen prince. He was a bit of a mess, mostly interested in drinking, until he forgot who he was and sleeping off hangovers in random taverns. Daeron really did not want to go to the big tourney at Ashford Meadow because he knew their father, Maekar, would be there, and he was not in the mood for a lecture. Daeron decided to go into hiding at an inn, but he had a problem. He had a little brother with him who had very obvious, very bright Targaryen hair. You cannot really hide in a crowded inn when you are traveling with a kid whose hair practically glows in the dark with royal ancestry. So Daeron took a razor and shaved Egg's head completely smooth. It was a disguise. Without that silver hair, Egg just looks like any other common street urchin or stable boy. He is just a bald kid with big boots and a bit of an attitude. This is where the name comes from. When his head is shaved, it is round, pale, and smooth. His brother started calling him Egg as a joke, and the nickname stuck. When Egg meets Dunk, a massive hedge knight, he does not tell him his real name. He just says he is Egg. Dunk, who is famously described as being as thick as a castle wall, just assumed Egg was the innkeeper's son and the stable boy, but Egg lied to him that he was an orphan looking for a job as a squire. He has no idea he just hired a prince of Targaryen blood to carry his shield and clean his boots. In the books, this secret is a huge deal. The silver hair of a Targaryen is basically a giant neon sign that says I am important and probably rich. By shaving it off, Egg gets to see the world in a way no other Targaryen ever has. He sees how the common people live, how they suffer under bad lords, and how the laws of the land often ignore the poor. If he had his hair, every innkeeper would be bowing to him, and every knight would be trying to use him for political leverage. Instead, because he is just a bald squire, he gets kicked around, sleeps in the dirt, and learns what life is actually like for the people he will one day rule. The show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, leans heavily into this. In the trailers and the promotional material, you see the contrast between this humble, shiny-headed kid and the high-stakes world of knights and lords. It is important to note that the Targaryens in this time period are still very powerful, but they are also very messy. The family is full of internal drama, and having a prince wandering around incognito is like a ticking time bomb. Now you might wonder if he stays bald forever. In the books, he keeps his head shaved for a long time while traveling with Dunk. It becomes his signature look. However, as he grows up and eventually moves toward his destiny, he does let it grow back. History eventually knows him as King Aegon V, or Aegon the Unlikely. He is called the Unlikely because, as the fourth son of a fourth son, it was statistically impossible for him to become king. But through a series of deaths, tragedies, and a very strange Great Council, the crown eventually landed on his head. When he became king, he was actually one of the most beloved rulers by the common people. He tried to pass laws to protect the small folk and limit the power of the high lords. The lords hated him for it, calling him a king who acted like a peasant. They never forgot that he spent his youth as a bald squire, traveling the muddy roads of Westeros. If you look closely at the lore, there is also a connection to Game of Thrones. In the show, Maester Aemon at the Wall is actually Egg's older brother. When Aemon is dying in the later seasons, he starts hallucinating and calls out for Egg. Egg, I dreamed that I was old. It is a heartbreaking moment because he is talking to the little bald brother he grew up with, the one who chose to follow a hedge knight into the sunset rather than sit in a palace. Aemon's passing is significant, as he was the only major character in the series to die of natural old age. Now let me give you a little backstory of how George R.R. Martin came up with the Dunk and Egg story. As we all got to know from the Game of Thrones series, Brienne of Tarth is related to Ser Duncan. According to George R.R. Martin, he actually came up with the idea for Dunk's character while he was writing backstory and doing more research for Brienne during the events of Game of Thrones. During A Song of Ice and Fire, and during the events of Game of Thrones, Brienne of Tarth uses Dunk's coat of arms when she's traveling across Westeros to stay incognito instead of using the house sigil, because Dunk's armor and his coat of arms wound up in her father's treasury on Tarth. So Brienne grew up knowing about Ser Duncan the Tall, who was one of the greatest knights in Westerosi history. Because he wanted to write a backstory about where Brienne got this armor from where she was trying to disguise herself like, well, it belonged to Ser Duncan the Tall. Well, how did Ser Duncan the Tall get the armor in the first place? And you get this whole origin story with them. So now you know the truth behind the shiny head. Egg isn't just some random kid from the village. He is a Targaryen prince playing the most dangerous game of dress-up in history. His journey from a bald squire in the mud to the king of the Seven Kingdoms is easily one of the best stories George R.R. Martin has ever written, and seeing it come to life in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is going to be a wild ride. And now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Egg's choice to live like a commoner made him a better king, or was he doomed from the start because he cared too much? Let me know your theories down below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore of Westeros, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out and lets me know you want more of this content. If you want to keep up with everything happening in the world of Ice and Fire, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.